It didn't begin with the question. It began with a doorway. An ordinary doorway, an ordinary coffee, and an ordinary, "How are you?" And before I had thought about it, before I had checked anything inside, I heard my own voice answer. Someone asked me how I was today. It was an ordinary moment. Doorway of an office. A coffee in one hand. The kind of question you've answered 10,000 times. How are you? And before I'd thought about it, before I'd checked anything inside, I heard my own voice say it. I'm fine. The person nodded. Smiled. Walked on. And I stood there for a second, with my coffee, with my own answer still in the air. And it sounded strange to me. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just slightly off, the way a piece of furniture you see every day looks weird when the light hits it differently. I'm fine. The word fine, sitting in my mouth, before I'd asked myself if it was true. I noticed I was tired. I noticed there was an email I hadn't opened. I noticed something heavy in the chest that I hadn't given a name to yet. None of those things were what I had said. I walked to my desk. I put down the coffee. I sat down. And I thought, I just lied to a person who was being kind to me. But even as I thought it, something in me argued back. It wasn't a lie, exactly. It wasn't honest, but it wasn't a lie. It was something else. Something I had said so many times that the words had stopped meaning what they meant. That was when the question came, why does "I'm fine" come out before the truth? Before I check. Before I notice. Before I even know how I am. It's automatic now. Someone asks. The mouth answers. The body has not been consulted. A quiet answer came. Maybe fine became a door I could close politely. I sat with that. A door. Not a lie. A door. Something you can shut without slamming. Something you can close in a way that lets the other person walk on, unbothered, while you stay on your side of it. The room behind the door doesn't have to be empty. It just has to be, not open right now. Maybe, "I'm fine," is one of the gentlest exits language has ever invented. And maybe I wasn't lying when I said it. Maybe I was just closing a door I didn't have the energy to open. I started noticing it everywhere. In meetings, when someone asked the room how everyone was doing. 3 voices, in 3 slightly different rhythms. Good. Good, you. All good. None of those sentences had passed through anyone's actual day. At the cash register, when the cashier said, "How are you?" in the same voice they used for, "Did you find everything okay?" and I said, "I'm good," with the same speed I said, "Yes thanks." In text messages from my mother. "Are you eating well?" "Yeah." "Sleeping okay?" "Yeah." The 2-letter word doing the work of an essay I didn't have time to write. In a friend's apartment, after she'd just told me her week had been hard. She turned to me and said, "What about you?" And I heard myself say it again. Honestly, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I wasn't. But something about her week made mine feel smaller. Less worth opening up. And it wasn't always to protect other people. Sometimes I said it to friends I trusted, friends who had asked me real questions and meant them. And still, the word came out automatic. I'm fine. Like it had been issued to me at some point, a small badge I clipped to my shirt every morning, that said, "Nothing here you have to deal with." And most days, no one asked twice. Most days, that was the answer the world wanted from me. Another quiet answer came. I once heard about a small shop on a quiet street. The shop kept its sign turned to closed. Even when someone was inside. A passerby could see the lights on. A faint shape moving behind the window. Maybe the sound of a kettle. Maybe a chair scraping back from a desk. But the sign said closed. It wasn't a lie. The shop was not empty. There was someone in there. There was even, sometimes, work being done. The shop just wasn't ready to let anyone in. Maybe the owner was sorting through inventory. Maybe she was on the phone with a difficult customer. Maybe she was sitting on the floor in the back room, with her hands over her face, and she didn't want anyone to walk in and see her like that. The sign on the door wasn't deception. It was protection. And I think, maybe, "I'm fine," is sometimes that sign. Not a lie about who's inside. Just a small piece of paper hanging in the window, saying, "There's a person in here, and the person is real, but the door is not opening right now." Not because the person is hiding, but because opening takes more than they have today. I sat with that for a long time. And then something in me admitted something I hadn't said out loud before. I don't say, "I'm fine," because I'm trying to fool anyone. I say it because if I tell the truth, if I say I'm tired, or I'm sad, or I don't know what's wrong but something is wrong, then I have to keep talking. I have to explain. And if I explain, the other person has to react. They have to look concerned, or ask follow-up questions, or wonder if they should do something. They have to spend energy on me. They have to carry, for a moment, a piece of what I'm carrying. And I can't always stand the thought of someone carrying that. Not because they wouldn't. Because they would. Because kind people would slow down. Look at me. Try to help. And part of me would rather hold the whole weight myself than watch someone I love bend a little to help me carry it. But it was more than that. Maybe I was not afraid they would leave. Maybe I was afraid they would stay. And I would have to let them see how heavy it was. Because sometimes being cared for feels more frightening than being left alone. A quiet answer came. Maybe, "I'm fine," wasn't about hiding from the world. Maybe it was about not making anyone else heavier. Another quiet answer came. I once heard someone say that a cracked cup does not always spill right away. For a long time, the cup looks ordinary. You can pour water into it. You can drink from it. You can even hand it to someone, and they can drink from it too, and never know. The crack is small. Maybe a hairline. Maybe along the bottom, where no one sees. The cup holds. It holds and holds. It looks useful. It looks fine. Until one day it doesn't. And the strangest thing, the person said, is that the cup wasn't lying. The cup was holding. That was real. The water in the cup was real. The use was real. But holding together is not the same as being whole. A crack can be quiet for a long time. And a person can say, "I'm fine," for a long time, and mean it, and not be lying, and still be a cup with a small line running through them, that they have not yet shown to anyone, including themselves. I let that sit. And then something turned, gently, the way a key turns in a lock. I realized, the person I was protecting from the truth might not have been the other person at all. The coworker who asked how I was, in the doorway. My mother in her texts. The cashier. The friend whose week had been hard. They weren't fragile. They were busy, mostly. Or distracted. Or already used to me being okay. The person who couldn't handle the answer wasn't them. It was me. I couldn't handle hearing myself say it out loud. Because if I said, "I'm not fine," then I had to look at the not fine. I had to count it. I had to give it a shape. I had to admit it wasn't going to dissolve just because I ignored it. And, I'm fine," was not, in the end, a lie I told the world. It was a sentence I kept saying to myself, over and over, hoping the saying of it would make it true. Maybe, I'm fine, was a small spell. A quiet incantation I whispered into ordinary mornings, hoping that if I said it enough times, the day would soften, and the heavy thing in my chest would lift, and the not yet named feeling would name itself something easier to live with. It didn't work, of course. But I kept saying it. Because part of me still believed, if I say I'm holding together, maybe I am. Maybe I did not say it because I believed it. Maybe I said it because I needed a sentence. Small enough to survive the morning. After a while, a quiet answer came. Maybe you don't have to tell the whole truth at once. That one stayed with me. I had been thinking about honesty as if it were a binary. I'm fine, or the whole story. The closed door, or the door flung open. Nothing in between. But the answer suggested something smaller. A crack of light. A sentence shorter than a confession. Then one last quiet answer came. I once heard someone tell a tired person, "You do not have to open the whole door. Maybe just leave the light on. Maybe someone kind will know that means. Not yet, but don't go too far." I held that one for a long time. The next time someone asked me how I was, I tried something different. I didn't say, "I'm fine." I didn't tell the whole truth either. I said, "I'm okay. A little tired. Thanks for asking." It was small. Almost nothing. But it was a light left on. And the person paused, just a second longer than they would have if I'd said fine. They didn't ask anything else. They just nodded a little slower. Like they had heard me, and were leaving the door unslammed in case I wanted to come through later. I walked back to my desk. Nothing dramatic happened. The heavy thing in my chest didn't dissolve. The email I hadn't opened was still unopened. The day was still the day. But something small had shifted. I hadn't told the whole truth. I had just turned the sign in the window from closed to a thin line of light. Maybe that was not honesty yet. Maybe it was only the first light. Under the door. And somewhere inside me, the part that had been holding it all together, alone, quietly, for so long, felt, for the first time in a while, a little less alone. Not saved. Not fixed. Just, a little less alone. Cross-reference. What "I'm fine" becomes when it has been said too many times to count. End of file.